Our good friend Richard C. Lyons is here. He is the author of two fantastic books, required reading, if I may, The DNA of Democracy, and then Volume 2 is Shadows of the Acropolis. And I'll tell you, as I was reading both of these books years ago, something would be described, some historical moment, and I'd say, that can't be right. That can't be how that happened. And I would do my own research on it, and sure enough, he nailed it. And it was written so beautifully and perfectly and simply and easy to understand. It is just, they're just classic. The DNA of Democracy and Shadows of the Acropolis by Richard C. Lyons. Richard, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Mike. Great to be with you this morning.
And to you, let's start here. Why does this matter?
It matters because there's confusion over the term, Mike. So democracy is a genus term. If government is the genus term, democracy is a species of government like monarchy or aristocracy. But we are not a direct democracy. We are a representative democracy, and the synonym for that is republic. So people are confusing their terms. So if I say government equals tree, right? Direct democracy is a maple tree. Representative democracy is an oak tree. So they're fundamentally different, but they're all trees.
Okay. Why? Which one are we?
We are a representative democracy whose synonym is a republic. A republic is a representative democracy based on persons voting their will through representatives. So we have representatives in the House of Representatives. That is our best expression of direct democracy, is our representation in the House of Representatives. We also have representatives in the Senate, and then the national representative of the people is the president.
Why did our founders do it this way as opposed to any other way?
Because in a direct democracy, there's the inverse of every type of government. So if a monarchy in its tyrannical form becomes a tyranny, and an aristocracy in its tyrannical form becomes an oligarchy of self-interest, a direct democracy becomes mob rule or subject to demagoguery. And you can see that in history. You saw it in the French Revolution when they started beheading everybody they disagreed with. That was one mob taking over the government and performing its will.
What else did our founding fathers see, good or bad, about each of these that have been tried in history?
Well, there are virtuous monarchs, right? But they say, but then there are invirtuous monarchs. So you have on the bad end, you have Richard III. On the good end, I know not whom to cite. In aristocracy, those are offices based on honor, right? So you will have an honorable aristocrat who's moral. Then you would have a bad aristocrat who is not. And in democracy, it's wonderful because everybody is represented through direct voting. And that used to happen in the ecclesia in Athens. And everybody gets a direct vote. The problem with that is a large voting block can become a mob if they're stirred up by a demagogue. You might think of Antony, after Caesar's death, stirred up the mob to throw the Senate out of Rome.
Tell us more about that story.
Well, Caesar was overtaking powers that stunned the Senate. The Senate used to be in Rome a body of equals, and they were representatives. Rome was a representative republic, much like we are. When the Senate was becoming disenfranchised by a coalition of demagogues like Caesar aligned with the mob, the Senate became alarmed, and Caesar was assuming tyrannical powers and systematically sidelining the Senate. So the Senate took action by assassinating Caesar. After his assassination, Mark Antony, at his funeral oration, stirred up the mob to throw all the senators who had assassinated Caesar out of Rome and effectively ended the Republic.
Why? So what lesson are we to learn from that?
Well, every species of government has a problem. Monarchy can become tyranny, aristocracy can become oligarchy, direct democracy can become mob rule. The genius of John Adams in this letter, John Adams was the founder of many of the state constitutions of the original colonies and also of our federal constitution. And what our federal constitution is exactly is what they call a mixed constitution. Our presidency has powers reflective of monarchy. Our Senate has powers reflective of aristocracy. And our House of Representatives has powers reflective of direct democracy. But taken as a whole, and as our Constitution is written, what we are governed by is a constitutional republic.
Why does it matter that the left, or I should say, why are they obsessed with just the democracy part?
I think
you never hear them talk about republic. They just focus on that. What is that?
Well, the Democrat Party has been changing our government for the past 100 years to concentrating the power of government in one place, Washington, D.C., and under one branch of government, the executive, inside 435 administrative agencies that we do not vote for, right? So they are shifting our means of government from a representative government, right, based on localities, states, and our representatives at the federal level. They have been fundamentally changing our government to one ruled by the president and only the president. And so what they are after is national voting, right? They keep wanting to take over the vote and make it national, whereas it's a state responsibility. They want 330 million people to vote for one president who holds tremendous power over the government. And they are really, if you will watch, they have over all these years been sidelining the House of Representatives and sidelining the Senate in its powers. It's really funny when they say, the House of Representatives has oversight power. Watch persons from the administrative agencies and hearings just laughing off the power of the House's oversight. That will tell you where the power is.
Yes, and Democrats and I'm sure Republicans as well have been offloading their responsibility to the executive branch. They're all to blame for that. Yeah. All the way down to making war.
I just had an interview yesterday about this agreement with Zelensky. Well, it's not a treaty. It's not even a 10-year agreement. It's an executive agreement based on Biden's wish. If Trump gets elected in November, he can say, I don't agree with this agreement, and I'm the executive. Treaties were meant, per Constitution, to be approved. Every treaty was to be approved by the Senate and 60 members thereof. And that is no longer the case.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure we get this right, because the rest of that CNN interview, they go around and they go to a Trump rally and they catch Trump supporters flat-footed, right? And they're like, hey, so what is a republic? And they're like, I'm just here, So they make Trump people look like idiots. So I just want to make sure we get this right one more time, and then we can move into some bigger picture stuff.
Two things are true.
What are the differences?
Two things are true, I think, Mike. That Obama was conducting Biden where he wanted Biden to go. That's true today. Barack Obama is running the government or the administrative state. And secondly, when they're screaming about democracy, they want the sort of democracy of the French Revolution, where one man like Robespierre can stand in front of a mob of people and say, we do not like so-and-so, so go get him. That's their form of democracy. It's the bad part of direct democracy.
So you said the elements of each that are in our government. So you said the executive branch was built more like the monarchy.
Right. It needs to have a unitary view, a unitary power, because it's based on foreign policy. The federal government was really formed as a defensive mechanism for a collection of states. And the presidency of that government is supposed to be unitary in its powers because it's supposed to be military in its powers.
Yes, that's
and they are, and it is the executor of law is that office. So to execute the law, you need to be unitary.
Okay, so that has more the monarchical element. What is this? What is the Senate to be? Or originally?
The Senate is to be the calm house where persons reflect on the legislation formed in the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is supposed to be closest to the people, and it is mirrored in the fact that representatives are elected every 2 years. They want that to be the most fluid and the most representative of the people. Then legislation would go to the Senate, and the Senate, with cool minds, would consider legislation and determine by reason whether it was reasonable. Then things move to the president, and the president can veto legislation, or it can be overridden by a two-thirds vote.
And I would argue, and correct me if I'm wrong, the not only cooler minds in the Senate, but senators originally elected by the state legislatures.
Correct, and that was changed deliberately by Woodrow Wilson to marginalize the power of the states.
Yes, to your thesis,
yes.
And further concentrate more power in the federal government, but also in the mob,
right. Yes,
as they're directly voted on by the people, which is not like our founding fathers specifically said we are not like we're going to have two separate bodies that are elected in two different ways.
Yes,
it would be ridiculous to have them elected the exact same way.
Well, and there was a reason, Mike, and the reason is if a senator is elected by the legislators and the legislators are elected by the people, the senators sent to Washington, D.C. would defend their states and the prerogatives of their states. When once it became a direct vote, the senators became more representatives of the federal government to the people of their states. They would come home and tell the people of their states what the government was going to do to them.
That's right. Yeah, that's great. Oh man, that is such a fundamental shift. But again, when you say you said Wilson did it, and when you know who did it and why, then it makes perfect sense. Okay, so someone may be listening to you, Richard Lyons, author of The DNA of Democracy and Shadows of the Acropolis, which everyone needs to buy, and say, all right, what's wrong with the people? You know, the people should decide. The people are great, and people are wonderful, and we need more democracy than we have now, and than our foolish founding fathers gave us.
You cannot, in a body as large as our country, have direct democracy. It's just you can't take every issue and have 330 million people vote. The best way is the way our Constitution was designed fundamentally was that most of the decisions were to be made at the local level, and at the local level, our Constitution defends the right of persons like Boston town assemblies to vote directly on matters concerning their locality. The next level of government was a state, and that was to be predominantly the representative government we were all ruled by because it is closest to us. People in Massachusetts aren't going to think the way people in California do. People in Louisiana aren't going to think the way people in Texas do. So they created the states deliberately and left them an independence so that they wanted government closest to the people. The closest is local government. Then the closest is state government. The furthest and least representative is a federal government, and therein, if you have direct democracy, you're going to have demagogues on television every day screaming and yelling. And you see it today. It's yellow journalism. You saw it about what people were talking about Trump's followers. They don't even know what our government is. That's wrong. They have a better idea what government is, but they're a minority. They don't run the media.